Welcome back to the podcast. Today is a very special day. We got our principal, Mr. Tawney, with us. Welcome, Mr. Tawney. Welcome, Mr. Tawney. Welcome. Fist bump. Fist bumps. Today we're also joined by Kevin, Braden, Noah, myself, Nick Wiersbicky, and birthday boy Ashton Tamzarian. So thank you for making time to be here today. So this is really cool. Fun fact, Mr. Tawney was my principal back at Little St. V. Back when I was in first grade. So it's like a full circle moment to be here with him, and he had the desire to come on the podcast. So obviously we were honored to be able to be like, yeah, of course. So Mr. Tawney, we just want to ask you, how did you get to St. V? What was the journey on how you got to St. V?
Well, actually, it seems to be quite a journey. I've always said that ever since I first got a job in education, I got a call before I applied for the job. I started at St. Paul's Elementary School, and then I went to Lake High School for a while teaching math, and I was principal there, and retired, and it was not even retired for a day, and Father Crocker at St. Vincent's Elementary School, called me and said, I need a principal. And I said, he said, I need you to apply for the job. I said, well, when do you want the resume? He said, by tomorrow. And so I applied for that, and I told him, well, I'll give you 5 years. And I ended up liking so much, I stayed for 9 years and then retired. Then I got a call that they needed a tutor at Our Lady of the Elms, the high school, so I did that for a while. And then last summer, in late June, I got a call from somebody that I had known from St. Vincent's. Kids went to school here. He actually, the man, also went to school here, and he wanted to know if I knew of anybody who wanted just an interim job. They had somebody, but for some reason it didn't work out, and then they just decided just to hire somebody for 1 year because it was so late in the school year, trying to go through a lot of applications. And I said, well, I don't really know anybody who wanted just a 1 year job. And he said, well, how about you? And I first said no. I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. I'm not used to working full time anymore. But I got off the phone and started talking to my wife, and my wife graduated from school. It was just St. Vincent's back in the 60s, and she said, oh, you should just talk to them and see what they want. And so from that point on, the next couple of weeks, 10 days, it was just strange. I mean, I talked to one person, I talked to the president of the board at the time, and then I talked to the person who was looking for the charge of the committee for the principal, and came in and interviewed, and they said, you want the job? And so I often said that God just he brought me here. I mean, I can't explain it any other way. I said I love the public school system. I love being a principal, but when I went back to the little school, which is funny because I never liked them calling it the little school until I got here. And now I talk today it's a little school, but when I went there, I said it was the best thing for my soul. I got an opportunity to go to church a lot in the morning because it was right there, easy to do, and I had a good experience at the Elms as well, and here, and now I get to be here. I get to work with young people, and I've always liked being principal too. So that's it. But God has a plan for me, and I don't think it's to retire.
No.
My wife says that I'm the only person she knows that's retired 3 times, failed retirement. She failed retirement 3 times, but as long as I'm healthy, I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's amazing, because I know each and every one of us love you being here, and you being here has kind of set a different fire at St. V that we've all experienced, and it's just something that we're like, man, this is really nice. And what's really cool listening to your story is you hear how God works in our lives, because it wasn't this big, you didn't hear an audible voice of God being go to St. Vincent, St. Mary, you know what I mean? But through other people, it was okay, that maybe this should, maybe through your wife, through people that you love and that presented.
Going off what he was saying about how much we appreciate you, the Thursday masses, at first it was 3.5 people.
Yeah.
But then
He was
I
the
forget. I was the half. I didn't quite make it.
He got lost.
And then the numbers just kept growing and growing and growing. And then you just see how everyone now is so passionate about their faith here. Before you came, no one really talked about it. And it was something that everyone kept to themselves. So that's something we appreciate you for, Mr. Tawney.
Well, I appreciate that. It's And funny, I was just writing something, a letter today, and I signed this at Principal of St. Vincent and St. Mary's, and I thought, you know what? It's really St. Vincent St. Mary Catholic School.
Yeah.
And not that we're not open to all Christians, but we could even say Christian school, but we don't have that in there. I think we should say it at that point, because obviously I already know because it's Saint, but it's the focus should be that. I just feel real strong in that, and I've gotten a lot out of you guys come to Mass. It makes me feel good when you're there, and the fact that you guys decided to do it after Advent was over, and that's what makes it really good.
Yeah, not only that, we've all gotten so much closer with each other through all this stuff that we've been doing through Christ, and it feels great to be closer with all these people.
It is. It really is. Yeah, I got to know you guys a lot more. You're all juniors, correct?
Yeah,
Two.
he's a sophomore.
So you're just a sophomore. That's even better. I see you guys being because of these podcasts, I don't think you're going to just stop. I think you'll keep going next year. Whatever happens to me where I'm at, I'm sure I'm listening to them and watching them, and maybe come back and talk to you again.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Great.
I'd say the thing that I really appreciate too about the Thursday Masses is not only did we become closer with each other and you, but going to St. Vincent de Paul with you guys, I was able to talk to Father Normore, and he's just an excellent guy.
Yeah.
And also Deacon Terry.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can talk to them about so many things now.
That's good.
And that all really started with you
Yeah.
inviting us to church.
I've known my wife and I have known Father Norm forever. My wife actually lived longer than I did. She was got to know him from Newman Center before even thought about becoming a priest, I think. But he's a good guy, and I think I might have told Nick this, but my wife asked me, why do you think those guys come to church? They think it's because of you, or because of Mass, or because they get breakfast. And, and I told her, I said, well, I hope it's a little bit of everything. But I said, last week was a perfect example. It wasn't for breakfast.
Yes. Yeah.
So, because you're good, you had your meetings.
Yeah.
It's great. I appreciate the comments.
So the topic this week is faith, hope, and charity. And so, the first thing when thinking about that, what is the Bible's definition of faith? Because I was talking to Mr. Tawney about, what our faith is, how Christianity is different from the Jewish faith and stuff like that. And it's really through the New Testament. It's through Jesus. That's what makes us Christians, right? So in Hebrews 11, verse 1, it says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." And then it says, "By faith we understand that universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible." And so, when we think about these topics of hope and faith and charity, I love looking to the Bible's definition of what it really means, and I think it puts it perfectly there. It's faith is being confident in something you can't even see, and it's so true in our lives. Mr. Tawney has the faith to be it was a call from God that I got here, even though it's not something he wasn't able to see God moving the pieces in his life. He just reflects on it and is I don't think that happened naturally. You know what I mean? And so when we look at faith, I think it's very beautiful the way the Bible describes it there. I don't know if anyone has anything.
I can say something. I've never heard that verse, but I really like it. And the thing that it made me think of was the Nicene Creed. If you don't know what that is, it's basically just a statement of what a Catholic is. It kind of just sums up your faith. Mm-hmm. And one of the things it talks about is how God is the creator of all things visible and invisible. Mm-hmm. Because with faith, that faith is believing in things that you don't see. And maybe it's not a literal sense of what you see, but maybe something you might not understand fully or something like that. And I really like that excerpt.
I think one thing that is really powerful about you being here is that before this year, my freshman year, I think talking about your faith openly was not something that really anybody did. And there was a lot of things that happened this year that led to that being a more open topic with people, whether it was the podcast and people talking about that or the early morning masses. But I think that one thing with you being here is that people are more open about their faith.
Something to build off on what you said. It also gives like people a starting point that didn't have a background of being a Catholic or even being a Christian. And what the Mass started was that's a way that you can start and start understanding. He's a prime example of
Yes, very, very sure. Yeah, I can attest. Last year, like, I think you put it perfectly. We say we're, a Catholic high school, and religion should be, and Christianity should be the forefront of that. That should be the focus. That's what makes us different than a public school, And I could say last year and all the years that we've been here, that has not been at the forefront of mind. If anything, it's been, how are we going to get the school better? But it's not, how are we going to get the school better in faith? You know what I mean? Because the first step is in faith. That should be the first priority, and then everything fall into place after that. Because if we're truly what we say we are, God will lead all the other things to fall in place if we put that first.
Another thing is, too, you need to be in a good environment to be able to succeed in anything. And this year, being able to just speak with people and hear faith through others has really been helpful in at least my journey through faith. And that goes with anything. Just being in a good environment, setting yourself up to succeed is just what you need to do.
And that's so true, because I think we can all attest to this, especially like us three when we went on the Eucharistic revival. Like, I talked to you about that. Like, the fact that we got to miss a day of school to go worship God and have this beautiful Mass in Cleveland, it was really impactful. Like, I cried there. It was something I came back feeling there's a fire set underneath me. And then the next night or the night after that, we had Mary's Life Night, And that was just another thing that was like, okay, we just did two things that were faith-oriented that the school provided for us that honestly in the past years haven't been provided. You know what I mean?
That's the thing, too. It's not like we were persecuted for having faith, but we weren't really praised for it, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think there was really that encouragement to, do this with the school or go on this retreat or something like that. And I mean, the school had Kairos and other things, but I felt like it wasn't until you and also Miss Goshi, because she deserves a lot of credit too.
Yes.
But now it's in an environment where you said, you can't succeed unless you're in a good environment. But now that environment is supporting and encouraging people to grow in their faith and talk about it more.
What I was going to say is the Eucharist revival also brought us more people into our lives to help us build our faith. Like Gianna, I forget the one. Maddie. We met Gianna, and she came on the podcast, and she like really opened my eyes to faith, and like how passionate she was, like really set me on fire. And then the last Mary in His Life, so much people went. Yeah. And what was it?
Like
60 people.
Yeah.
And
really?
Yeah. And then afterwards, we just talked, and we played the game that you guys played at Kairos and everything. And it really made me want to go on Kairos.
I'm so excited for
that. But yeah, I think the reason that we're here and doing this podcast stemmed from those things. There was a fire set underneath us from the Eucharistic revival, and then immediately magnified, you just pour a bunch of gasoline on it when we went to Mary's Life Night, and I was able to give a witness there, and that was like super impactful for me. And I was like, I like talking about my faith, and it made me realize this is actually this is a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy this. And so I texted Ashton, and I was like, hey, what do you think about, I'm like, this is kind of a crazy idea, but what do you think about doing a podcast? He's like, let's do it. And I'm like,
we posted on our stories, and I think it was 100%.
Yeah.
And so we're like, screw it.
Yeah, let's do it, And that wouldn't have, I don't think that would have been on our mind if it wasn't for those things leading up to it. The same, in everything in life, there's stuff that leads up to where you are and to those bigger moments that you reflect back on. You're like, I'm really glad those happened, And that's where, the faith part, just going off of that verse, integrating that, is we didn't know what was ahead of us. In those moments, we were just enjoying the moment. But God knew what was ahead of us, you know what I mean? And so having faith and being like, God, I don't know what's ahead of me right now. I don't know where any of us will be in 2 months from now, or even a month, or even tomorrow, right? But having faith that God will lead us in the path that we're supposed to is very, very powerful.
And He's already kind of led us on a very specific path that we're all really grateful for. I mean, we're almost 9,000 strong on Instagram, and people very vocal about their support for us, and we just appreciate it a lot. And that's one thing that we could have only done through God and God's help.
Yeah, I don't think you realize the effect you're having. You know, you have this effect on people that, think about that, 8,000, 9,000 people that you have they get one thing out of this when you do it and changes their life one way. It's just amazing. And it's, you always hear stories about people just start something so very small and all of a sudden it's great. And, you guys are on your way. And I'm hoping that it becomes part of the school culture. I think that would be the great thing, it'd be a great thing that, you could do podcasts for each one of the religion classes or something. There's something that, I wonder if they're listening to them, that's, in fact, I got to think about that. Well, you got them all taped. Maybe they should listen to one of them. Maybe that should be crazy. I wonder about that, but no, it's great, and you're all, you're all, in my mind, you're all pretty cool kids, and I just shouldn't call you kids, but I do, and that makes a difference too. That it's not a funny thing to go to church, with the principal, and that's what's good too.
Yeah. To bounce off of what you just said, it's like sometimes the small things, like possibly seeing one of our clips on Instagram might spread into something beautiful, which we've seen through all people that have contacted us. In Matthew 17, verse 20, it says, "He replied, 'Because you have so little faith, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you.'" Like, I absolutely love that verse because, like, we can look at, like you just said, it's the little things that can do such a big thing. Like, the little thing of us responding to that email where Miss Goshi invited us to the Eucharistic revival and being like, yeah, let's go. And it leads into something that's very, very moving, right?
So when Noah and I were at St. Hilary, they would do this thing every year where they would pick a saint and like a theme for each year. And that would kind of that would be what the religion classes were focused on, or at least they would touch on it from time to time, just specifically around that theme. And I remember one of the themes being, the saint was Mother Teresa, and the theme was do small things with great love, because that was one of her biggest sayings. And I think that verse, she probably read that verse a lot, or at least was inspired by it because of the amount of the things that she would do. They weren't grand gestures, right? She would help one person, and that person would maybe tell other people, and that's probably the best strategy to spread faith, is just by
bouncing off of that. You don't have to move a mountain for it to be great love.
Yeah.
Maybe it has to be like a pebble, a small thing, but it has a lasting impact, So you don't have to help like the entire school, but if you can help one person, like that's what makes a difference. That's what shows great love.
You never know what one thing you say can like do for someone.
What's the thing I've always talked about? The kindness boomerang.
Yes.
Yeah. I've always been inspired by Mother Teresa for a couple of reasons. One of the things that somebody asked her, because she was old and kept working, and they said, don't you need rest? Don't you rest? And I usually this. She said that, well, I can rest in all eternity. Now that I have to do it. And I kind of, when people ask me why you're still working, you say, there's someday I'll rest, but right now it's important for me anyway to do what I'm doing. It's faith is just it's such a. I wonder how people go through life without faith.
I've thought about that too.
If you don't believe that there's eternity, in your lives, and how do you go from day to day when the bad things happen?
Exactly.
There's reasons, and that's that whole thing. In fact, I had something I was going to show you, and I forgot to. Next time I have to show you, but it's kind of interesting to. I'll give you this example. Maybe you can picture this. If I put a little piece of paper and I set it down there, just a flat piece of paper. And I said if I stood up and I dropped a marble on it, I would tell you I can drop that marble and that marble's not going to roll off that paper. And most of you say, yeah, no, it's going to roll off that paper. But if I take that piece of paper and I fold it till it looks like a little box, and then I drop the marble in it, the marble will stay in that box. And we try to figure out God in our mind, and that's the problem. we can't. You know,
We can't comprehend
can't
it.
comprehend it. You know, I think I told Nick that day when we were talking. I heard this. It was kind of strange. Just listening on the radio at one of the stations, it was this song, and they were talking about it, but it was a talking within the song, and this little girl said, you know, why can't we figure out what God is going to do? And they said, well, if we knew what God was going to do, then you'd be God. You know?
Yeah.
So He's got a plan, and you just got to go. You got to go with it. I know you know. You most of you know, have met, at least some of you have anyways. My son Jimmy, you know, the Downs man, who's now 48. You know, when he was born, you know, it's like I remember when my wife, I had already left for the night, and then called the next morning, and she said something was wrong, you know, wrong with the baby, and I didn't even know what Downs meant at that point. And you know, my first reaction was, you know, I prayed, and I said, God, I don't understand. I tried to do everything right, I think, you know, why, you know, but then we soon just realized that, you know, God has a plan for this, and it's turned out that, I don't know, he's my best friend most of the time now, you know, at 48 years old. But you just have that faith, and that's a hard one sometimes, it's faith. But I think if you go to Mass, if you go to communion, if you pray, I think it just you know, helps you out so much.
I 100% agree. And like when we got to have lunch with Jimmy the other day, that was awesome. You know, he's so fun. He's very lively, and he, like, you know, he jokes around. It's really cool to see. And that's the thing. It's like we try and think in our minds, like, what is the impact of this? What is the purpose? Like, God, why would you do this to me? Or what would happen? Like, I would do this differently. And then you look back in a few months or even a few years, and you're like, it makes sense, you know.
It just does. He's just that does everything in life. And there are some tough times in life, but I think without religion, I don't know how you get through them. You know, I think that everything major in our life, between my wife and I, in our life, has always been based around religion, about Mass, about, you know, from first communions to graduations to weddings. That, you know, it's just very important. In fact, one of the hardest times for my wife, both and I, was COVID, because we couldn't go to Mass. They couldn't receive communion. That was really tough. And we appreciated it a lot more even after that.
Yeah.
There you do it. So.
Like you said, there's a purpose even behind that. You came back and you wanted more.
Right.
There's
Absolutely.
greater desire for it.
Absolutely.
So I know you gave a speech one time on the Eucharist. If you want to touch on that a little bit, Mr. Tawney.
Well, I just, you know, we had talked the other day. This is, you know, why they've had the Eucharistic Mass and all of this, and this is this 3-year plan that, and I believe I don't believe it's just at the Cleveland Diocese, because I know we're doing it in our church too. So I think it's something from the Pope that in 3 years there'd be a refocus on the Eucharist. Okay, and that's, so I was asked to do a presentation to the Knights of Columbus. We have, it's called Men of Faith, but it's through the Knights of Columbus there, and we just talked about. So I kind of had this idea of talking about the virtues of faith, hope, and love, and how they're connected to the Eucharist. And the faith is that's a very difficult thing for a lot of, especially non-Catholics, to believe, that we believe that's God in there. And the ramification of the whole thing, in fact, I thought that Ms. Gussie did a really nice job the last Mass. We talked about, you know, that if you believe that's God, then you also believe that's Jesus. You also believe that's the Holy Spirit. You know, it's just really kind of powerful. And that's why I think it's sometimes hard for some of even our kids here to think, why do you want to be so reverent at that point, because they don't get that point. And I just think there's your faith, and then that leads to the hope. Do you know what I always think of hope is, the virtue of hope is joyful expectation. That's how I think of hope. You know, because you think about, like, a little kid, I hope I get a bike for my birthday, you know, and when you get it, you're very joyful, you're very happy, and I think that's our hope for, you know, for what should happen to us. And do you know what and I don't have the exact words, because knowing you guys, somebody will check me out, but in Mass, right before communion, when the priest breaks a little bit of the host and puts it in the, you know what he says? He says it's something like, will the mingling of the body and wine bring me to everlasting life? And I always like when I think about that at that point, that's that hope. That's the hope of what we're doing. So I think that's why that hope fits in there. And then the charity is just this love, and it's just and love, charity, when I would say the rosary, I used to say the rosary a lot when I would run. And when you say the first, the first three Hail Marys, I always say the first one's for faith, the second one's for hope, and the last one's for charity. And they always try to think about all the types of love there is, charity there is, And justice, I think, is a part of love, and just kindness and all of that. So I think they're so connected to our faith.
Something that made me think of is this is something that I started to do, but when I pray the rosary, like with my family or even by myself, something that I like to do is that with each decade also is I like to attribute that to something that can help the world in the sense of like, I'll say like for temperance or for fortitude or for wisdom or something like that, something that can like fill us with a little bit of God that can inspire other people. And you were talking about the Eucharist earlier. And I think that the Eucharist is actually a great example of faith. Because if you were to tell people in a Catholic sense that the Eucharist is the body and blood of Jesus Christ, that makes no sense, right? Like you could say he died 2,000 years ago. How can that be the body and blood? Like, it's unleavened bread. How is that his body? But that's the thing about faith, too, is that it's trusting in God even if you don't fully understand it. Like, I believe that the Eucharist is the body and blood of Jesus Christ. Just like in faith, you'd say, God, I believe that you're taking care of me. I believe that you're putting me on the right path. I believe that you're doing what's right, even if I can't understand that right now. And I really like that.
Yeah, it's just amazing. It's an amazing piece. I had another thought there, but I lost it. So we'll come back to that.
So I got another verse because we're talking about hope. In Romans 15:13, it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." So like some words that I like to break down the verses into like key words, the God of hope. Like that's such a powerful way to describe God, like God of hope, because he gives us hope. Like what he did on the cross, that gives us hope, because without the cross, we have no chance at heaven. You know what I mean? There's zero chance. You're not going to live a perfect life. And so he gives us hope through the cross. And then he fills each and every single one of us with joy and peace when we accept him and when you trust in him. And like, it's not always easy to trust in him. Like, especially in those hard times where you're getting, like, even you look at the disciples and when they get persecuted and whatever, and look at Peter and Judas, it's hard to trust in him sometimes, but putting your trust in him brings this overwhelming joy and peace that might not always be in the moment, but will come to you at a certain point. And then it overflows with, you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Like, think about, I just try and take every verse literally, like the fact that we can be overflowing with hope that was provided by the Holy Spirit, like that's just something crazy to think about, but it shows the power of our God, you know what I mean? And the magnitude of him. And it's crazy to think that we can be provided such a thing. And yeah.
It's kind of like when you're taking a picture, but like you start and it's really zoomed in. You can't see anything else in the picture, right? Mm-hmm. And there's only certain things that you can see. You can't make out a lot of details, but if you zoom out, that's kind of like God's view, and God can see everything, like past, present, future. And he has a plan for you, and that's his picture. But we can't see his picture, right? Yeah. We can only see what's right here in front of me right now. And so I just thought that was...
Yeah. I really like that. Because I think, like, I was watching this video of Francis Chan the other day, because I'm reading his book right now, and he has videos that go attached with his book. And it was him explaining that if we zoomed out from where we are right now, if you zoomed out 150 million light years away, you would see 155 million galaxies. Or, yeah, I think so. And that's just insane that, like, God created that, right? We believe that. And when we pray, we're praying to God that created all of that with such fine detail. And it just blows my, like, I was reading in Solomon, and like they talked about this at the prayer service yesterday. You need to be careful when you go, like if you're early in your faith journey, like just pray to God. he knows, right? But if you're deeper in your faith journey and you know better, if you've read Solomon before and where it talks about be careful with the words that you speak because you're talking to the creator of everything. And it's just, it makes you think. It's like, okay, when I answer prayer, I really need to like get myself in prepared. Like if I was going to go talk to the president of the United States or anyone of super powerful in this world and its stature, right? Even Mr. Tawney has to a certain degree. If you're about to go,
I don't think about it. That's true. But
you're going to prepare yourself a little bit more. You're going to be put together more, right? The same way, how would you prepare for the God of the universe, the person that created you and crafted you and died for you? Like, you need to be careful. You need to have reverence going into that. The same way with the Eucharist, when you're going into that, you need to be, because that is the God of the universe that died for you. And it's just something that I've been, like, sitting on for a while. I'm like, we need to hold more significance.
So you've kind of been on this kick about how God is the creator of the universe, right? Yes. And I love that. And I love hearing when Nick talks about that. And you mentioned about how he created all the galaxies and stuff like that. And that's crazy, right? But beyond that is he also created each and every one of us. And we're all made in the image and likeness of God. If you take a look at those galaxies, or let's take our galaxy, for example. In our galaxy, the Milky Way, we have the planet Earth, which has been able to sustain life for hundreds of millions of years. God created that. And like you said, you can't succeed unless you're in a good environment. And he created this good environment. And look at what it's led up to. So that means that the God that designed us too. Mm-hmm. And that means that we're also like a good environment in the sense that he planned us out. Each one of us, he created in his own image and likeness. And that makes us similar, but we also have our own unique characteristics. And that's why, like, yeah, God created the universe, but he also created us. And you look at how great and powerful those universes are, or the galaxies, and then you look at us and just remember that he created us too, but he gave us something more. He gave us like the ability to have faith and hope and love and stuff like that. And that's why, like, I just want to say one last thing is that, like, everyone watching, God created you. He has a purpose for you. And you might not understand what that purpose is right now, but trust in him and fulfill his vocation, or your vocation. All right.
Building off of that, that was good. He created, like, creator of the universe, created all the stars and all the huge planets that we can't even comprehend their size. But I think another thing that we can focus on is that he created those humongous things, and then he also created every single, like, grain of sand, blade of grass, every single little detail, every part of nature that we find beautiful. He made that, and he made that with a purpose.
Do small things with great love.
Small things with great love.
So one, like a cool story that I have that was very, very early on in my faith, when I didn't even know what I was doing, to be honest. I was praying for one of my first times, and kind of felt crazy. And I was like, this time, I watched a video from David Ladding, and he was talking about go to prayer with God and just sit there and listen to him. And I was like, what does that even mean? So I just went and tried it. I sat there, and I just kept getting this like desire, and like, I don't want to say voice in my head, but in my conscious like mind, I was thinking like, you should get up. I was laying in my bed. I'm like, what? Like, you know, this is when I was still like I'm not very faithful. I'm like, what is happening right now? I'm like, why? I'm like, I think that's my own head. You know what I mean? So I get up, and I was like, and then immediately as soon as I get up, it's like, go downstairs. I'm like, okay, it's like 11 p.m. right now. I'm ready for bed. Like, why would I go downstairs? I go downstairs, and as soon as I get downstairs, I'm like sitting there. I'm like, what do I do now? And I go, and I'm like, and I just hear like, look outside. And so I go look outside, and I'm looking out the window, and it's a full moon, and it's illuminating everything in my backyard. And I start looking at, and in my mind, I heard, like, I don't want to say voice, but it was a thought that came to my mind. It was like, look at the extreme detail in everything. Like, if you look at the rocks, the way they're chiseled, the trees, the way they're curved. For anyone that knows, I'm like a big tree fan. I love trees for some reason, because each tree is so different. I relate it to us. You know what I mean? Each tree is so different, but its roots, the bigger the roots, the bigger the tree, or more powerful, the more stand firm. And, you know, trees grow more in wintertime in the darkness. Isn't that crazy? Like, I didn't know that for the longest time. But
I
was
didn't
like,
know that until you said that
Yeah.
like a couple months ago.
in the same way in our faith, we grow the most in the darkest times when we have to rely on God. But besides that, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I felt like God was speaking to me, and I'm looking at all these little things in my backyard that I've never noticed before, just paying attention to all small detail. And I'm like, okay. And then I just hear another thought in my voice or in my head, and it was just like, if I could create all of this with such great detail, do you really think I can't handle your problems? And I was like, oh man, because at this time a lot of stuff was going on in my life, and I was like, I needed someone, you know. And so I was like, man, okay. So I go back upstairs. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. I didn't tell anyone about that for the longest time because I'm like, it sounds ridiculous, you know what I mean? But now that I'm firm in my faith, now I'm like, that is definitely, you know. And in that moment, I went upstairs and I just started praying to God. I'm like, God, I give you full control. I give you everything, you know what I mean? And from there, my life got so much better. And I don't think that's a coincidence at all.
No, I don't think it. I think it was you, Noah, when I was listening to one of the podcasts that made a comment about thinking about God, that you could talk to God, and at that time there's so many people having all these conversations with God too. You know, it's kind of amazing on that. Well, you know, I was always glad when I went to when I actually stopped teaching math and I went back to Walsh University, because I believe all the things that when you look at a subject like calculus, how everything in mathematics fits so together.
Yeah.
Right.
That, you know, that was God's plan.
Oh,
You
definitely.
know, and not just, it just happens. You know, that just can't happen.
It just works so well.
Yeah, and I always liked being able to say that. I would say that all the time when I taught. In you know, I couldn't do it in the public school system. You know, somebody would complain probably, but it's just interesting. He's there to help us.
Yeah.
And that's for sure. We just have to be, you know. I do all these little things like I don't know. It's maybe just because I'm getting older. It seems like I'm always misplacing something, my wallet
I
or my
understand
keys
that.
or something. And you know, as soon as I find it more, I say, hey, thank God for helping me. You know, I know that seems simple, but I just think that just a conversation, you know, like point me in the right direction.
One of the things, like going back to what you guys were saying about our God and how He created us, He also gave us the ability for free will.
Oh,
And like, and it's us choosing to talk about God and our free will that I love so much about this podcast.
I think a lot of people, free will is a very complex subject for a lot of people. Like, people are like, okay, so God has a plan for us, but we also have free will. Like, how does that work? And the way that I've begun to understand this, and I think I've said this before, but like, if you think about it, I don't want to say this is how God thought about it, but like, my understanding is like, when there's a choice involved, like God made the angels, and they worship Him, right? They don't really have a choice in that, right?
no, they do.
Well, they do. Okay, we had Lucifer, but
Yeah.
you know, but
I know what you're saying, though. Sorry.
but you get so, but they're standing there worshiping Him, right? And isn't love so much greater when it's a choice? You know,
Yes.
when someone chooses to love you over everything. Actually, like we talked about this before, but like Job, for example, like we always talk about him, but Job choosing to love God, even through all the stuff that he was being put through, like, doesn't that mean so much more, you know? And so the choice of free will just makes the meaning of love so much greater.
Absolutely.
And so that's how I think about it. What about you, Joe?
You can also think of it like this. You can think of it as a road, right? God has this plan for you, and here's where you're starting, right? He has this end destination for you. But there's many ways to get to one place. So your free will is just your path, your way that you can go to your final destination, to your
And
end.
God has, yeah.
I kind of like that, yeah.
I 100% agree when you said that, like, the most powerful love is when you choose to love. Because if you don't choose to love, if you're forced to love, then that's robotic. Like, it's artificial. It's not real, genuine
yeah.
love. And I actually want to bounce back to what you talked about, like your little story about how you went downstairs.
Okay.
And I think this is such an interesting take on prayer because, like, I haven't thought about it this way until, like, the last couple of months when you talked about this. But when you're in prayer, you don't always have to talk to God. Sometimes you can just listen instead. And I think that's something that we should all just take the time to do and maybe just hear His end. And like when you were listening, it's not like the heavens opened up and there was this loud like Morgan Freeman voice that was like, Nicholas, you know, like go downstairs and look at the moon. That didn't happen, but like you listen and look where you are now.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be dramatic, but
Something to go back to love. I was watching a YouTube video actually on it the other day, and it was talking about you when love walks into a room, you remember exactly when that happens. And it was also a choice that you can go to that love or run away from the love. And it was just something that stuck with me.
So like two things, like the way, like prayer is such an interesting thing because I think we've got, as Christians, sometimes we get caught up in constantly in prayer being a one-way conversation. And that's how I used to always think about it, but I always asking God for something or thanking God for something or whatever, right? But with your mom and dad, is it you always just speaking to them? No. They speak back, right? But you have to be able to listen. You're not, if you just walk away, you're never going to hear them, right? And so, you know, I think it's a powerful thing in prayer, setting aside time to just be there and be in the presence of God and listen and really, really focus on listening to Him.
What was the thing called that we did at Marina's Life last week?
Adoration.
That is one of the best things ever. When we were listening to the songs, everything, and they give us that time just to pray, it all just flows into you, and you could just almost speak it out. You can just let everything flow, give everything to God, and that was in one of the songs. It was like, one of the songs was talking about how you just give everything to God, just let him take it, let him just live through you. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's one of the best ways to pray. It's just adoration.
One of the things, going back to the adoration, it was just you and God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I listened to Nick about Kairos and whatever, and he was saying about how he's been focused on the cross a lot. And so when I was there, it was just me and the cross. I was just looking at the cross praying. And I look over to my left, because like this is during the song, I see a friend crying. And like I'm trying to hold it back, I'm smiling. And then I look over, I see you three, and then I just started bawling. And it was just like the comfort from Stet's on this side, Spack on this side, holding my shoulders, and all of us just crying, that like you truly felt God's love in the room.
Yeah.
And one thing about adoration is that God is truly right there. I mean, literally, that's the Eucharist. Usually there's a monstrance with the Eucharist inside. God is right there. He's in the room with you. And not to say that he's not, like, when we're doing this or when we're other places, but when you're in adoration and you're given something physical that you can view and that you can reflect upon, that's truly a special thing.
I have a question for you. So do you remember in 6th grade,
Miss McMahon's class?
Miss McMahon would always take us to adoration. And during those times, like, normally I'd just take my notebook and, like, doodle a cross or something like that. But there was one time, I talked about this on the podcast once, but there was one time when I was just, like, I felt this, like, presence, you know, and I love to think that it was God there with me. And I got goosebumps. I kind of have them right now just thinking about it. And that was, like, the first time that I felt like I had God's presence with me. And from then on, like, from 6th grade to now, my faith has just been climbing up, and I hope that it continues.
It's the same thing for me too. As soon as I started praying at adoration, it just felt so powerful.
Yeah.
Just faith in general just felt powerful. The instant I started praying, it was actually for you guys and helping me with my faith journey. I just started bawling. Like it was awesome.
And he doesn't cry. I want to preface that. That dude doesn't cry usually. You know what I mean? He's Dozer, you know? But I think for me, like the powerful part, my adoration experiences, or even in these like times where you're looking at the cross and you're just, all these people are focused on God. I don't know about you guys, but Brayden, you probably felt this way. Like in that moment, you're like, I don't want to do anything. I want to do this for the rest of I could stay here for like 3 weeks, you know what I mean, and not get tired of it. And so that's why, you know, looking at the cross, like I've just gotten such an obsession over it. Like last adoration, I just kept looking at the cross and I was just like, why would you do that? Like, why would you, like I told him about it. Like I was thinking about it. I just started imagining myself on the cross. And if I was on the cross, and it's like, and like Jesus was looking at me and I was on the cross, he would swap places with me. Could you imagine if you had to watch that in person? If you were on the cross dying for your sins, right? How we're supposed to. And this is basically what Jesus does. He swaps places with us. And imagine watching Jesus die for you, like in person. You would be crying at his feet. You would be like, get down from there. Let me back up there. You'd be so angry. You'd be like, are you kidding me? It'd be such an emotional moment, and the rest of your life would be impacted. You would not let anyone go and not hear about that action that he took. And that's what he did. So we need to live that out. And so that's like something that I've just been trying to think about recently, and that's why I've been gazing at the cross, and I'm just like, wow, like that, it's such a, like, I remember Elijah Lamb talking about God speaks to you sometimes through images, and that image just was so clear in my head of like, I can literally just, it felt like I teleported. It was like, I'm just on that cross, and then I instantly switch, and I'm just watching Jesus on that cross,
It's interesting to think that when we're in adorations and when we feel those like powerful, almost waves of faith, that's such a small, like we can't even fathom how small a percentage of that is than what we're going to experience in heaven when we're actually there with him.
Yeah.
But if it's 100 times or 1,000 times or 10 times what we feel, I think that's so amazing.
Kind of goes back to Mr. Tawney's point with like the marble.
Right.
Going back to what he was saying about not wanting to leave on adoration, we literally had to get kicked out the parking lot because we did not want to leave.
Yeah.
And that is not the first time that's happened.
No.
So I guess like the feeling of the love that you felt that night, that's how we should live every single
I
night.
think it's like you get a glimpse of where you should be. Like you understand, like, I should be with God. Like, I need to continue on this path.
And then you question why you don't like always
Exactly.
or like
It made
that.
me want to like drop out of school and then just stay in the church.
I think that every night,
Not
no.
only glimpse of what you should be, it's what you want to be. It was just
Yeah.
so awesome.
And
that
it's like
you-
where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Too.
I told him, and I think I've told most of you guys before, but like, it's kind of scary because like, I'll just have these thoughts that like in adoration or like in those powerful moments where you're like bawling your eyes out, crying, and you're praying to God, and you just feel his overwhelming presence. I always end up asking like, Lord, if you took me right now, I'd be so happy. Like I just want to meet you. I just want to be with you. Like if my purpose, if my plan here is done, I'd be so happy. Like please. Like, I honestly invite it. You know what I mean?
You told me one day, and it was kind of concerning at first, but he was like, if I die right now, I wouldn't even be mad.
No,
and
I'd
I was
be
so
so
confused. I was
happy.
like, Nick, what do you mean?
I'd be so happy.
I was concerned at first, but I understand what you mean.
Since we've talked about that, my fear for that death is gone.
I have no fear. Actually, I invite it. I would like. It's
That
like,
is interesting.
I don't know about
not like, I'm not gonna. I'm not. I'm not like. Okay, that's the wrong way to put that. The way when I say that, what I really mean is that is the greatest gift. You know what I mean? When death brings us into communion, direct relationship with God, and so it's like when I think about it, I'm like, I'm so glad that I'm gonna die one day. I like the fact that like if I died tomorrow, it'd be an amazing thing because I'd be met with the Creator and I'd be met with the Judge, and I'd hope it'd go well, And but it's just a thing that it gets me fired up because I'm just like, I know I got a purpose here. I know God has a plan and that He's gonna continue that plan. But man, it gets me excited for like, okay, when I get to meet Him and it's like coming home to that long lost friend that you've had to write letters to and call
The
with your
parable
phone,
of the, like, two sons.
and going to the biggest mansion you've ever, like, it's just these images that get in my head, and I'm just like, it gets me fired up thinking about it.
So,
Go ahead.
no, you can go.
Okay. Have you guys heard about glorified bodies and what we get to experience in heaven?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like basically, I should really research this more before I'm saying it. But what I've heard is that not when you just get there, but on like Judgment Day when everybody is, when it's the end or whatever, Revelation.
Yeah.
We're gonna get glorified bodies and can do things that we can't do right now, and it's gonna be really, really cool. And something that I'm looking forward to is like flying. I know it's like really dumb, but I think it'd be really cool to just like fly around.
Fly with Jesus.
Yeah, fly with Jesus.
Well, my other son, has always said that he believes that in his marriage, that's the one thing that you should do everything to make sure your spouse gets to heaven. That's true love.
That's good.
That's true love. You do what's that. I always something I always do when I go to when I go to communion, as I take the host, I always make sure I'm looking at the cross. I always step aside and take, because I think it's all tied in one.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it's very important. It's amazing.
I think, like, you guys probably heard this, but I like to tell people, like, the people that I'm really close with and it's a faith-oriented friendship or relationship, I always tell them I love them eternally. Because you can say, I love you more than the world, whatever, but when you say you love someone eternally, when you actually live that out, if you're spreading faith with them, if you guys are talking about God together and you're growing in your relationship with God together, that means you love them eternally, because you love them so much that you're going to bring them to the Creator and you want them to have eternity with the one that loves them so much. And so, like, that's been my thing, that God's put these, like, different revelations on my heart that's like, there's different forms of love. Like, I like to say, I've said this before, and I don't know if this is technically correct, but, you know, I think we can see it in our lives. There's love of this world. There's love that is temporary love that you can, you know, experience with maybe someone else or some friend. But when it's not rooted in faith, when it's not rooted in Him, it's not eternal love. And eternal love is rooted in Him. It's something so much greater, and it's a greater love. And it might not always be more satisfying in the moment than the temporary love, but it's eternal. You know, that's the whole point, and it's long lasting. Yeah.
What does Miss Goshi always say?
A family that prays together
stays together.
Yeah.
So Nick, I'm no expert, but that sounds true to me. Like, I'll believe that. You know, I'll have faith in that. Because one of you I was telling, but it applies to all of us here. If you have a friendship with someone that's like from classes or sports or something like that, that's a good friendship. You know, you can have a lot of fun with that. You can make some great memories. But if you have a friendship with someone that's united and binded by faith, then that's a great friendship, because that friendship will stay. Because if I become friends with you from classes or something like that, and that's the only thing we really have in common, it's the only one we talk, probably going to grow apart.
Yeah.
But I like to think that with you guys, since my faith brings me closer to all of you, I think it's going to keep me closer with all of you.
And I think building off of that, there's very much school friends, and then there's deeper friendships that you have.
Yeah.
And when you have faith rooted with those friendships, it's not just faith in God, but it's faith in each other that they're going to do their best through God and what God wants you to do.
And it's really easy to see, like, God's love directly through those people that are in tune with Him and in relationship with Him, because they're letting God work through them already. You know what I mean? So you're able to see, like, Mr. Tawney, for example, these phone calls he keeps getting about these jobs, right? Those are people that probably those relationships are rooted in a deeper meaning. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's easier for our faith to grow through those other people.
Nick. So, like, something you said that made me think this. It's really not what you're trying to go for. But Kevin said, like, at St. Hilary, you have these themes every year, like, do small things with great love. And you mentioned how Mr. Tawney picked up the phone, right? And he heard that call. So one of the themes at St. Hilary was answer God's call, change the world. So God is calling you, right? You can either, like, decline it, or you can pick up, you know? And you can pick up that phone and say, God, what do you want me to do? And that kind of goes back to free will. You have the choice to answer that call. You can decline it or you can answer it. The choice is up to you. That's really all I was trying to say.
And, like, doesn't it, like, I just try and think of it in the literal terms of what the Bible says and, like, how we're supposed to understand God. Doesn't that fire you up that the creator of the universe, the God, you know what I mean, that made all things, made the detail of everything, is calling you and has a purpose? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, that's just crazy to me. It just makes me desire Him more. Like it makes you, like, in these moments and, like, in adoration and stuff like that, you're just like, how could I ever not live this out? You know, and how can I not focus on this? Or and on the times that I do choose to not focus on this, like, what am I doing? You know, and it just makes me.
This is just I believe strongly in, you know, free will, but you just have to listen. You know,
Right.
Without going into the detail, I think some of you probably know a little bit that the first semester here was really difficult for me for some things, and there was a couple times when I was praying and said, am I supposed to do this or not? You know, I'm asking you to should I just say, hey, I don't need it. I don't need the money. I don't need the work. But for whatever reason, it said, hey, I need to be there, and I would have never met you guys, get to know you guys as well as I would have at this point. And it just so there's a reason why we're doing it. We just have to be open to it.
And that's the thing too about having faith is even when it's tough, even when it doesn't make sense, you just got to trust it.
You just say there's
and
a
things
reason
work
why
out.
this
Like
happened.
one of the things you love talking about is rejoice in suffering, right? But in those hard moments, like with the tree, in those dark moments, that's actually when it grows the most.
In those roots that are growing and they're traveling more like under the earth, like they're getting stronger, and it's like, so we might not see it in the tree exactly, we might not see the how strong the roots are, but it makes you more firm in your faith. You know what I mean? Those hard moments, you can't be knocked over as easily, and it's like the mustard, going back to the mustard seed, like I don't think people recognize when like scripture refers to it, I don't think people recognize how small a mustard seed is. Like it is so insanely small.
I don't know how small.
It's like I don't really even know how to describe it. It's like it's really small.
Like a grain of sand. Like
Yeah,
that.
like close to it. It's
Yeah,
really small, and the fact that God says we can move mountains with faith the size of a mustard seed, like. Wow, that is insane, And
No, think about that. There was sure that God could have had another way for Jesus to redeem us, but he chose to suffer.
yeah.
So that suffering, was
That's very true.
That we did nothing to do with this.
I don't think that's a great point. Yeah, like Noah said, rejoice in suffering is one of my favorite topics because it's so prominent in our lives. Because at some point you're gonna have, and we have to be prepared as Christians to face persecution.
Right.
We're very privileged to be able to do this,
Right.
and the underground church in China, like that has 100 million members. They all at any point can be killed for their faith, and they have to do it so secretive. So like we have to appreciate that we're even where we are and can talk about this. But but being ready for if that persecution comes, that we will not falter. Like don't be dependent on others. Be dependent on your relationship with God. Like it's not bad to be dependent on others, but that shouldn't be the number one thing. God is always the number one thing, right? So,
I'll tell you a quick story on that. When I was at middle school, we had mass one day, and a lot of our kids were Catholic, and the parents were there. And it just happened in the corner of my eye as I'm going to communion. I thought, boy, I didn't think that father was Catholic. And I watched him go to communion, and as I looked over, he didn't take the host. It was still in his hand. And I thought, I'm sure what I saw, I didn't see it. So I said to one of the teachers, I don't think I should say something. And so I waited till church was over, and I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, he took a host. I said, did you consume it? And he said, no. I said, well, where is it? He said, well, I put it in my pocket. I wasn't sure what to do with it. I said, oh, could I have it? So I just took it. I took the host and, and said, and then I told that story to the faculty, and one of the ladies said, oh, you took the host. I said, well, if I would have died from germs, I would have gone to heaven.
it's true.
So
that is very true.
Yeah, so it's just so important. It's an important part of our life. Important part of the Christianity is the Eucharist.
Yeah, I agree. Well, do you guys have anything else? Any final points, or?
I just say keep doing what you're doing. It's great. It's good to see more people. I get to know more people, and you do this, and I hope you continue next year and be part of it somehow.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time to
Yeah,
it.
it's just been great.
And Ashton, we appreciate you on your birthday
Yeah,
coming
cool.
here.
23rd.
But like
Third.
I think now why the 23rd?
Inside joke.
Okay.
but like Noah said, I do believe like it's the greatest gift we can give you is having like moments like this where we're all pleasant together.
Anywhere else right now.
Yeah. So it's amazing.
Well, you think you took up your time off your day off to come here too.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, all right, you want to clap?
Mr. Tawney, why don't you give it a clap?
Yeah, give us
Just a clap?
Just clap.